Greetings, everyone. Welcome once again to the Oz and Crew Reviews podcast. I'm Ozzy here once again with my co host, Mad Matt.
I'm here to tell you all about the Twinkie.
Today, today we're here to talk about Ghostbusters, which all the time until now I thought was actually called Goatbusters.
Bah.
I'm sorry, bad joke. this is obviously a classic. I don't think I need to explain that.
No, I don't think anyone can really argue against that at this point.
But I haven't watched it in a long time, so it was kind of like there are bits and pieces I remember, but there were a lot of parts in this I forgot. Like I actually kind of forgot how sleazy Venkman kind of is.
At times, yeah. He tones it down by the end, and he tones it down even more in the next movie.
But this is, a lot of people have fond memories of this movie, and we're mainly doing this because, well, there was a really bad movie relatively recently, and then two movies that were more positively received. It'll be interesting to look at for the first time for me. You've already
hmm
seen one of them.
I've seen one of those two new ones, and that one was really good. So I have high hopes for you liking that one.
But just to get us rolling, you wanna go over the synopsis real quick.
Oh yeah. So classic synopsis of a classic movie. Um, Three doctorates at a university decide to take up ghost hunting, essentially. One of them is basically an unbeliever, but he does believe in checking up on things like this once in a blue moon. The other one is a bit of a loon, but he's a really good tech guy. And the other one is very much into mechanics and architecture, etc., etc. So they all have their different specialties. Finally, at one point, they found that a librarian at the local library had been attacked and managed to get all three of them to show up to investigate the ghost appearance. Using a electronic device that can help detect spiritual energy, they managed to trail the ghost down to the basement where they try to make contact. It hushes them, and then they try to jump it, in which case it attacks them back, scaring them out of the building and into finally figuring out the last bit of a mathematical equation to possibly use mechanical means in order to capture and permanently imprison ghosts who are causing trouble. Upon returning to the university, however, all three of them are getting kicked out and have to go into business on their own. They force one of them to put what was it? I forget what they call it, but essentially a giant loan on lean on his
Oh,
family
mortgage,
farm
mortgage.
mortgage. They put three mortgages onto his family home in order to get enough money to get all the tech and vehicles and property together to try and get this thing off the ground. At first, it looks like it's going to go nowhere. However, they have one first person show up for them that's a legitimate case, which is Sigourney Weaver's character. Um, Once she gets there, they question her about what's going on, and finally, Dana takes Mr. Venkman over to have a look at the place. Doesn't see anything, but promises her that he'd try and look into it further, while also kind of coming off as a bit of a sleaze. Let's be blunt there. They head back, but as they're possibly running out of money and spent the last bit on food, they finally get another legitimate call, this time from a large hotel, and they're being asked to try and take care of a ghost on the 12th floor. Apparently, there's been rumors for decades, but it's recently, in the last couple of weeks, gotten more and more agitated, violent, and more frequently seen to the point that it's actually starting to scare away guests. The boys head up there. Figman ends up getting slimed. Both Stans and Spangler start at least some mini fires, which have to be put out. And then they finally head down to one of the ballrooms where something was already set up, and then basically blow the entire room to smithereens before they catch what is essentially been known by the fans as Slimer and put him away in a containment trap. They managed to get 5K out of the hotel staff to permanently get rid of the ghost for them and head on off, to which case they get more and more calls to the point that it becomes local coast to coast news. As this is all going on, Bakeman is still looking into Dana's problem at her apartment and does come up with the fact that the guy who built her apartment is a bit of a loon. And also, in particular, the word Zool that she heard coming from her fridge is the name of a Saltime deity that's underneath a bigger one named Gozer, who is really big with the Sumerians. No, still no solid clue as to what they're doing there or why they're there. But as Dana returns back to her apartment, she's attacked and apparently possessed. When this happens, also, Lewis, her neighbor down the hall, is also attacked by what appears to be some sort of demon dog or terror dog, I believe they're usually called. And he is chased out of the apartment and before he's finally possessed and then goes on a little bit of a minor street-wide rampage. He is stopped by the police, brought into the Ghostbusters, and they start seeing lots of weird stuff with him. He doesn't seem to know his regular name. The heat sensor thing that they have is seeing the terror dog and not his normal form, and a couple of other things. As this is all going down and they're trying to figure out what the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper have to do with each other and what they have to do with Gozer, the guy who's the head of the department services gets a warrant to shut down everything, forces the containment system for the ghosts to be turned off, which causes a giant explosion and frees everything they've been capturing, which was actually slowing down the advancement of Gozer. The spirits all run amok. The Ghostbusters are brought before the mayor, and they convince the mayor that if they're allowed to go back there and actually fight off the ghosts, and in particular stop Gozer, they can stop the end of the world, and he'd be looked upon fondly for sending them over there to do that. They get over there. They manage to survive the road itself literally splitting underneath their feet. Have 20 some stories, and finally confront Gozer. Gozer physically disappears, but takes a form of the Traveler, which turns into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. They fry it, can't seem to stop it, and what they hint at earlier is that reversing streams is a dangerous thing that could cause essentially a lot of photonic energy reversal. So they aim the streams into the place where Gozer came from to reverse Gozer and send it back to where it came from by force. The explosion happens. All the Ghostbusters survive. Lewis and Dana are brought back to their normal selves, and the movie more or less ends as Slimer comes screaming at the screen. The end.
Yep. It is a crazy ride when you actually go through it again, but
Yeah, that's also one of the things that's actually really brilliant when they thought up the script for this one, is that they knew they had to start small with like the little librarian ghosts and all this stuff, and then you just build up to this giant marshmallow man running down the street. It's like, oh, well, this is where the movie's going on.
you know, there's an interesting thing about this is a weird internet. So you know how sometimes you'll have certain facts about classic movies that people will frequently get wrong.
Yeah.
This movie, the one thing is that everybody, for some reason, keeps misremembering Gozer as Zool. Like everybody thinks the main
Oh,
villain is Zool.
nah, no, yeah, no. Zool's one of the terror dogs. Matter of fact, it's the one that possesses Dana.
Yeah,
I
and
believe there's also an internet rumor that Stay Puft was supposed to be the Michelin Man. I don't know anything for sure on that rumor though.
I thought he looked more like a Pillsbury Doughboy, but
Could have been that too.
but
Either way, legally different.
and you know the funny thing for me is I kind of forgot Rick Moranis was in this until we started watching it.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Oh yeah.
he's good at playing the really dorky character.
Oh, extremely so. He's even better in the next one.
Um, I it's weird. Like I remember all the Ghostbusters main actors, but I kind of forgot like a lot of the supporting cast because I forgot Rick Moranis was in this. I forgot Sigourney Weaver was in this until she actually walked on screen. I was like, oh yeah, she was in something from the '80s aside from Alien.
Oh, here's an interesting fact. So Rick Moranis was not originally meant to be in this movie. I forget what happened, but originally John Candy was supposed to be in that role.
That would have been way different. That would not have been the same
That would have
character.
been played off very differently. Yeah. Also, I can't think of his. Jim Belushi was supposed to be Venkman.
You mean John Belushi?
John Belushi, yeah. John Belushi was originally supposed to be Venkman and died before production could start.
That makes sense because him and Dan Aykroyd were friends since they were in Blues Brothers together.
Hmm. So, fun fact: Slimer is actually the spirit of John Belushi.
Oh, that's freaking weird. That's the canon explanation.
That's the canon explanation. He's the gluttonous spirit of John Belushi.
I guess if you're gonna immortalize the guy, I guess that works.
I mean, obviously, it changed very much from that original intent, but it is what it is
All right.
originally.
I just, and speaking of Slimer, the whole "he slimed me" line. I because I hadn't rewatched the movie a bunch of times. Oddly enough, the version of that line I remember the most is actually from the Commodore 64 Ghostbuster game, where you hear the really staticky, crackling voice going, "He slimed me," which is what happens whenever the ghost gets you instead of you capturing them successfully
Mm,
in the game.
okay.
It's just I think of that instead of actually thinking of the line from the movie because in the movie it doesn't stick out that much because he doesn't really put any energy into it. He's just kind of like he slimed me.
Well,
Uh,
the thing with Bill Murray in that particular scene is he's still struggling to get up, like literally the entire time, because what the script originally says is that he's supposed to be able to flip back onto his feet and start talking again. But the entire time they just went with it, and he's just sitting there struggling on the ground trying to get back up because the proton packs are literally that heavy.
yeah. Oh, so they didn't think about that how heavy the
No,
proton pack was.
not at all. Matter of fact, Bill Murray picked up the proton packs at number 3 and went, "How do these kids get such light proton packs? Why don't we get these?"
He was yeah, he was kind of like a turtle stuck on its back.
Oh yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just that heavy and that awkward to get around in.
And the other thing is when they freak out and there's not even a ghost there and they shoot at the cleaning lady
Mm-hmm.
and she's going, "What the hell are you doing?" Didn't you say they didn't even script her to be trying to put the fire out after her dialogue
I,
ended?
I I believe she not only supposed to, not only was not scripted to be putting the fire out, which was just something that she started doing on her own. I believe her reaction, her line there was actually not meant to be an actual line. She was just supposed to be hiding behind the thing quietly and then kind of poking her head out. The pyrotechnic guys scared her so bad she just went, "What the hell you do?" And they kept it.
Because didn't you say she was actually a real cleaning lady?
She was actually a real clean lady. As far as I'm aware, a lot of that upstairs stuff, as well as that opening and ground bit stuff, were actually shot in actual hotels, but they would add like extra carpeting, extra fake walls, etc., so they wouldn't actually harm the place they were filming at. So
Right.
the actual people behind the scenes were really clever and did a really good job and made sure things stayed clean after they were done. Just quickly roll everything up and you're gone. Whereas the Ghostbusters are making a horrible mess and lighting half the building on fire.
Yeah, yeah. They really went into that first mission against Slimer. Well, I mean, technically it wasn't the first mission, but they went in with their proton packs, having had no practice with them, having no idea how to aim them. They're just kind of pulling the trigger and pointing it and hoping it hits for the
Pretty
most part.
much.
But still, that's better thought out than the library ghosts, where it's like they get there and then Venkman's like,
What do we do?
"What do we do?" Like, because they didn't even think about what they were supposed to actually do when they actually found a ghost. They just
Oh, they
they,
want to talk to us. What do we do? Stop that! Starts calculating something again.
uh, the Ray yells, "Get her!
Get her! Run!
Never mind, run away!" Run away!
I just bumped my end table here.
And I do, I really appreciate the way they portrayed the Environmental Protection Agency guy, because just overbearing, obnoxious government official that doesn't know what they're doing
My
just
bad.
makes so much sense. It works so well because
On
everybody,
multiple levels, yeah.
even if you're not speaking about government, everybody has dealt with some authority figure that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, but thinks they do anyhow. Because we live in a society where people fail upward.
Somehow, yes.
It's just I'm like, this is exactly what would happen if ghost busting had been a real thing in the 80s. Some weirdo would have been like, they're faking it, and went in there and caused like a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, it's pretty much the same as 28 days later. They're infected with rage. Let's just open up the cages anyways. Ah!
You can't just cage these people. They're not people anymore. Oh, well, what else? What else should we discuss about this? Um,
By the way, can I mention that the visual effects artists on this movie were fucking brilliant?
but they do a good job. Yeah, that was good. But I was gonna say they do a good job of showing you how much of an asshole Venkman is. Like the first time you see him,
Oh yeah.
because the first time you see him, he's doing this psychic ability test on these two volunteers. One's a guy, one's a pretty blonde girl, and he's holding up a card with it facing away from them and having them guess what's on the card. The guy guesses wrong. He flips it over and shows him what it actually is and then zaps him. The girl guesses wrong, and he says that she got it right and puts the card down without showing them what was actually on the other side. And even when the guy finally guesses it right, he still gets zapped anyhow. It's like he is literally just being nice to the girl for no, he's not actually conducting a real experiment. He's just trying to get in her pants.
that does seem to be the case, but he does seem to have hit something either way because he does seem to get something to come out of the boy for a little bit, for just a moment before the boy just gives up on it.
Yeah. If he had actually if he had actually told him that he had the correct one on the last thing. Because really, who would like that was such a weird guess too because it wasn't a shape. It was three
Yeah.
squiggly lines and he says a few squiggly lines and he just goes, "Nope, wrong," and zaps them again and you're just like that was like that's an insanely lucky guess because that's like if I was guessing shapes that wouldn't have been one I would have said.
By the way, looked her up real quick. Jennifer Runyon, that was the college girl in that scene. She has a movie as recent as 4 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she still gets around. Oh, and 2019, she was in a horror movie. Not very well rated one though, sadly, by the look of it.
Yeah, considering that her movies that she's known for, literally all of them are from the 80s. If you look at the four movies it shows at the top of her IMDb page,
Yeah, but I don't always
Ghostbusters.
trust that one because it's not always the greatest.
That is true because there was what was it? Oh yeah, that's right. Jason Voorhees actor
Oh,
didn't have
Kane Hodder, yeah,
didn't have Friday the 13th as the movie he's
as
known
any of his
for.
movies. Yeah, it's like what? How do you have Kane Hodder on here and none of the Friday movies are on his top four list? That's a lie and a half. She was on Murder She Wrote. Till Death Do Us Part, Vinny and Bobby, Carnosaur. There we go. Silent Night, Bloody Night 2, Revival, Terror Tales, and Gunfight at Silver Creek was the last one she did a little while back.
Um,
But yeah, Yeah, that's the thing. What I've also been noticing too is that a lot of the side characters in this movie, not all of them, but a good amount of them have seemed to have gone on and still are in the industry one way or another. The only one that seems to be exceptional was the boy in that scene, and he stopped in the late '80s. He did a couple more comedies and stuff, and then kind of just dropped out.
Didn't Rick Moranis actually stop acting?
Rick Moranis stopped for a while because apparently his wife had passed on, and he was going to take care of the kids no matter what.
Okay.
That was his big thing. Actually, he seems to be back. He was doing like little voice work things for a while there, and now he's on an episode of a TV series in 2018, apparently here. And 4 years ago, he was in another movie role.
Are you sure those weren't before he stopped acting?
He stopped acting in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, but I could have swore like a few years ago I saw another thing mentioning him stop. He was
Actually, yeah, he stopped in '08, and this is 2018 and 2020.
okay. Yeah, you're
So it's
right.
been about 10 years.
Um, what else should we talk about? You got any moments you really want to talk about before I go on to mine?
Um, oh, also funny fact. So mentioning the visual effects on this movie. Stellar effects, by the way. Wait till you see 2016 movie. It's going to be terrible. Uh, don't even hold a candle to the visual effects on here. Even though you can see some of the weird effects of them being a bit on the older side these days, they're still really good. They actually had a visual effect with a giant ghostly monster bat thing that they just couldn't squeeze into the movie. Fun fact: the same visual effects guys would the next year work on a movie called Fright Night, which dealt with vampires. So they got to use the giant bat prop that they had made and got to use that as the giant melting vampire and movie sequence. That and they got to make a melting zombie and a couple other really cool things for that movie.
Right.
So that was a thing that they kind of made for this movie, but never made it, but got to still be seen on screen somewhere else. Um, Other things to mention. Oh gosh. Oh, so that Stay Puft scene. Did you notice the fire hydrant going off as he's walking down the street?
I might have briefly noticed that.
Sand.
Sand?
They, they just used really fine grained sand and just shot straight up in the air in slow motion. You can't tell the difference.
That's
Uh,
funny.
mm-hmm. The different expressions for State Puff had to be switched heads because you had the normal dopey looking face and then you had the slightly angry face when he looked up.
Yeah, that would explain why his facial expression doesn't change without switching
Without
camera
too
angles.
much, yeah. Yep. That's why they did what they could with the big guy. Again, the usual giant guy in a big giant costume on a miniature set. One of the Slimer effects was actually literally a green painted peanut when he's flying around the chandelier.
Ah,
That's actually a green painted peanut. They couldn't find something small enough to make for a prop, but somebody happened to think about some peanuts they had out in the snack bar, came back with it, painted it to the same green as everything else, filmed it, and it worked.
that's crazy.
Uh, I think anything else. I mean, also just a wildly quotable movie too. As I already led Win to at the very beginning of this episode, tell him about the Twinkie.
Oh, yes. You need to explain that in case the people listening haven't watched it.
So those who don't know, Egon is a big snacker. Earlier on, it's hinted when Venkman hands him a Babe Ruth for proving himself right to Venkman about being able to capture ghosts. Later on, like just past the midpoint of the movie, they're assessing what's going on with the containment system, and Egon has to try and explain to them what he's been seeing in the power levels, the PKE energy that's going around, the psychic energy essentially that's causing the ghosts to happen and becoming more plentiful. According to his studies, from what he saw from the very beginning of the movie, when they first started being able to do tests on how much energy is in the local area, as opposed to what it was at that point. He said if he was to compare it to his Twinkie, that it was a Twinkie 32 feet long, weighing several hundred pounds.
Yeah, yeah. The explanation was that the Twinkie represents what the output would normally be, but what it actually
Mm-hmm.
is
A 32-foot long Twinkie. So it is more than quadrupled in size, more than like 30
yeah.
times the size, essentially.
Which is why, generally speaking, while there would be the occasional ghost sighting, there's not like mass hysteria with them not having Ghostbusters before the Ghostbusters actually showed up. It was just very convenient timing, which probably is why the Environmental Protection Agency guy actually thought they were con men that were causing people to hallucinate all this shit, because it was convenient timing
It
that
was
they
extremely convenient timing.
that they started doing business right before everything went to shit.
By the way, they also hinted at possible bigger behind the scenes reasons for things like this happening in the third movie. They don't completely explain it away, but they do hint that there seems to be a rhyme or reason to some of it.
Uh,
And
Um,
sometimes, as even Venkman says at the very beginning of this movie, some things just happen for a reason.
right, that is true. And like you said, there's a lot of, and you were saying there's a lot of good quotable lines in this, like
Oh yeah,
"We came, we saw, we kicked its ass."
we came in, saw, we kicked its ass,
It is true.
slimed me.
It is true. This man has no dick.
Hmm. Yes, we both have the same problem. You.
For me, the most memorable part about this movie, because like I know I saw it as a kid, and the part that I always remembered is pretty much the final confrontation with Gozer.
Hmm.
Like I kind of forgot about her having like Dragon Ball Z level speed to like dodge the freaking photon packs when things first start. But obviously, everybody remembers Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That's
Hmm.
the most memorable thing about this. So it is.
One of the bigger things, yeah.
So it is funny that when, for whatever reason, they did a Ghostbusters Transformers crossover in the comics. This
Hmm.
was one of the moments they decided to redo in the comic, where Gozer tells them to pick the means of their destruction, and Starscream is Ray in this situation, where
Oh,
they're like she's like, you've chosen your destroyer, and they're like, none of us chose a destroyer, and Starscream's just standing there like, but the thing he thought of was himself, so there's a giant Starscream trying to kill them.
typical.
The only thing that won't hurt me is me. Oh shit, I was wrong.
Very wrong, Starscream. I think you hate yourself more than you realize.
And that's one of the other great things about this series is just some of the extra material from other stuff that's come from it, from like video games, comics,
Hmm.
cartoon. Obviously, the cartoons are huge,
The
which
cartoons are huge. They have had some minor influences on the movies. I'll give you that. A matter of fact, some of the cartoons even reflected some of the stuff from the movies. Uh, my pack for 1 and 2 actually does come with 2 episodes from the cartoon that did directly reflect stuff from the first 2 movies.
which the funny thing involving the cartoon is so do you remember who voiced Venkman in the cartoon?
I don't remember his name, but I do remember he's the voice of Garfield. Yes,
Right.
which is why Bill Murray. Which is why it's funny that Bill Murray would pick
Yeah.
up playing Garfield for the live action movies for a while. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. It's almost ironic. It's like it's a role reversal.
Hmm.
It's like the guy who voiced Garfield voices Venkman in the cartoon, and then the guy that was Venkman in the live action voices Garfield in the live action Garfield movies. That's just that's so weird that it happened that way. I wonder if the
But I
people that
understand him doing that Garfield voice was by accident. He misunderstood who the directors were and immediately hopped on the project without actually knowing what it was.
Uh,
Whoops.
so his line in Zombieland was actually like legit when they're like, "Is there anything you regret?" And he's like, "Garfield, maybe."
I mean, he didn't do a terrible job with it, as far as I'm aware, but it just wasn't what he was expecting.
Right. I wonder if the people that cast him kind of realized the irony of casting him for that role.
Oh, they probably did. That's probably why they asked.
Uh, so final thoughts, Matt.
Well, thoughts. This movie's still freaking awesome. This movie's old, a year older than me, thereabouts, a little, like half a year older than me, I believe, actually. But still, a really excellent movie. Despite even some aged effects, you'll look right past them. It's just such a fun ride from beginning to end. The characters are awesome. The acting's great. The visuals are still really decently done, despite again the age of it. And the writing is really good. All the horrific stuff scares the hell out of you. All the hilarious stuff will have you cackling for the next half hour.
It is a very good movie. And for me, the movie's actually 4 years younger than me. Oddly enough, we're actually recording this on my birthday. um, re-
Ta-da.
Rewatching this made me think about how crappy like the movie industry has gotten in modern times, where like this show or movie was an original idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oh yeah,
ironically, the live action filmation Ghostbusters came before this, and they had to license the name from them. But this still, aside from the name, literally has
aside from the name, was an original
yeah,
project,
yeah,
an original
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Just that by happenstance, it shared a name of a different project
yeah,
altogether.
yeah, because it has no connection to that version of Ghostbusters.
Nope.
Um, but there's such overall the idea of this movie is so original that you don't see new IPs like this get made anymore. All they do is reboot everything now.
Yeah,
Like,
the only time you'll find something original is usually when something independent.
and I've seen people argue that like there's no way that if this show had or movie had been created now, it would have been as successful
Very
because
unlikely.
well
Yeah.
they don't really look that cool or whatever. It's like I think it could work even if it had just been recently made because it's like they're going out to stop ghosts and they're basically dressed like exterminators. It makes sense.
On certain levels, it does work, but it would be a real hard push to get it out there.
And granted, we also have to acknowledge part of what made this movie work is also actually the people that were cast in it.
Yes. You'd have to have exactly the right kind of cast to capture that lightning in a bottle effect.
Because we don't really get too many newer actors that have the kind of star power that actors from the 80s and 90s have.
No, not anymore.
I think that's
Outside
that
like maybe action flicks occasionally.
right. And I think that's part of the problem is because so then it's like, well, we don't have like a must-see actor to push a new IP, so we're gonna take an existing one and put one of the actors that isn't good enough in the role. Seems to be the way it
Yeah.
happens now.
That or we managed to get our hands on this actor from the 80s. Apparently, they're still really popular. Let's just put them into something in this movie so that we can argue that they're technically the star in the movie, even though they aren't.
Oh man. But
Stuff
yeah,
like that.
this movie still holds up. It's not like Ghostbusters is not like my favorite series, but it's still I've still never hated watching it. I always enjoy myself. It's not one that I have to come back to as frequently as some other stuff that I like rewatching a little more. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think comedies are more enjoyable if you don't watch them constantly, so you have
Yeah,
forgot
you don't
you
watch them cause I have
the
almost all Monty Python's Flying Circus. I have all Monty Python's Flying Circus. I have at least a couple of their movies. I don't watch them on repeat. No way.
Yeah. Because it helps to have slightly forgotten the jokes so that you can laugh at them again when you watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have a joke
Oh yeah.
memorized, it's not funny anymore.
The parrot sketch, everyone. The parrot sketch.
Oh my god.
But,
I
but,
could I could do a joke a rant about that, but it's not related to this, so I'm gonna say we're just gonna wrap it up for us here.
alrighty.
So until next time, everybody, have a good one.
See you all next time.